the Havana syndrome be linked to UFOs? Well, let's talk about it. So get in here. This is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please like and subscribe and let me know what you think in the comments below. Yeah, ever since the 60 Minutes piece, everybody's been talking about the Havana syndrome. Is it Russia? Is it the U.S.? I think that both sides probably have directed energy weapons, but could there be something more going on? Well, Think Tank says DIA confirms the U.A.P. connection to Havana syndrome. Links to this report right here from the Defense Intelligence Reference Document. And among other things, it's talking about these effects of UFO, UFO-related human physiological effects. Physiological effects enumerated include such phenomena as paralysis, electrical shocks, feeling of heat, burns, perceptions of odors, etc. A compilation of the frequency distribution of these effects is enumerated below. The catalog thus constitutes a useful database from which it is anticipated that certain physical source causes may be inferred. Very interesting. And then we have Jacques Vallée talking about some similar stuff here.
On the physical level, what we know today is that UFOs are a lot of energy in a small space. I've just published a book called Confrontations, in which I've gone through the basic observations of the light and the energy from UFOs. What we know is that these objects represent probably the energy of a small nuclear plant in a small volume. And it's manifested in light, in microwaves, and in pulsed microwaves. Now, we don't know a lot about what pulsed microwaves do to the human brain. So I've spent a lot of time looking at the medical effects. For example, in 1988, I spent 2 weeks in Brazil, in the interior of Brazil, from Fortaleza to the Amazon, talking to people who had seen the beams, had been injured by beams from UFOs. And there is no question that there is a lot of concentrated energy that in a form that we don't understand.
Injured how? Burned?
Not really burned. There is impact on the skin. They do describe a hot sensation, but the beam would also pin them down and push them. And we don't know how to make a beam that does that.
How many people did you talk to?
50 people in those villages, in those different isolated villages, and they describe the lights, the frequency of the light. They describe the flickering. They describe the objects, which in many cases were very, very close to them.
So there you go, Jacques talking about concentrated energy from UFOs that can have physiological effects, and he does talk about effects on the brain. And we know that Gary Nolan was brought into the whole UFO arena by studying physical effects on the brain. People that were, in close proximity to UFOs were having these effects, and it was seemed to be damaging their brain or causing other problems. Although the U.S. Government has since come out saying, well, first of all, there's no such thing as the Havana syndrome, and second of all, there's no effects on the brain. There's no brain damage caused by this. I forget who it was that said that, but I covered that just the other day. So what's really going on here? Well, we don't know. I mean, some of it could be UFO, some of it could be directed energy weapons, but that's not the end of the story on directed energy weapons. Richard Geltreich is saying in the first paragraph from Zero Hedge, for Russia to have successfully used a mobile directed energy weapon over 1,500 times, including against the U.S.'s top 5%, 10% performing officers across the Defense Intelligence Agency, then it must have deeply penetrated the U.S. government in order to discover those elite targets' identities and locations. Yeah, that's very concerning if that is what happened. It really is. And then Christopher Sharp is saying something is clearly rotten within the U.S. intelligence community. The longer ODNI resists the building evidence on Havana syndrome, the greater public trust will evaporate. Both DoD and IC selectively ignore evidence that conflicts with their agendas on Havana syndrome and UAP. So, yeah, there you go. There's what various people are saying about the Havana syndrome, and it may or may not be linked with UFOs. Certainly, UFOs can cause similar effects. Are they the sole cause of the Havana syndrome, or is it a mix of directed energy weapons and UFOs? Maybe different phenomena going on. Gary Nolan talked about in the cases that he studied this, thickening or more dense sections of the brain, the caudate putamen. I'm saying that wrong. Caudate putamen. I can never say that word. It was different in these experiencers that had been subjected to these energies or whatever it is than in non-experiencers. There were physical effects on the brain from this contact. Now, is that the case with directed energy weapons? In that portion of the Havana syndrome, if indeed that is part of the Havana syndrome, or is it all UFOs? So we could be looking at different phenomena with similar effects. That's kind of where I lean right now. I think there's different groups that have this technology, the directed energy weapons. CBS News, The Insider, and Der Spiegel released the findings of their joint investigation on Sunday, blaming Russia for Havana syndrome, which refers to the mysterious ear and head pain that over 1,500 U.S. government USG staffers across the world claim to have experienced since 2016. It appeared time to coincide with Congress's plan to vote on Ukraine aid sometime later this month, with the intent obviously being to scare lawmakers into approving more funds for America's proxy war on Russia. So, is that what's going on? Are they blaming Russia to fund the Ukraine war? That I don't want to get into all of that. But that is certainly an idea that is out there, and that is certainly within the bailiwick of the powers that be, to create a scapegoat for this sort of thing. So, but is that what's going on? Is it Russian-directed energy weapons that are causing some of this? And then, American-directed energy weapons that are causing other parts of this, like the Amy Eskridge story that I reported on and that others have reported on. There's a lot to this. There's a lot of moving parts, and most of it behind the curtain that we can't see, unfortunately. And then, of course, there's the UFO part that has been studied by Gary Nolan and others that do have very similar effects to the Havana syndrome, as this document talks about. So, what's what? Again, I think we're still in the fog of war on all of this, and we're not going to really be able to figure out what's going on. It would sure help if the government would actually admit this phenomenon is real. Clearly, they're hiring people like Gary Nolan to study it. So on some level, they are admitting that it's real, but they're not publicly disclosing this. This is what the White House said when asked about it.
Thanks, Green. 60 Minutes reported last night on a connection between anomalous health incidents and a unit of the Russian military intelligence service. What's the White House reaction to that reporting?
So I'm going to be really careful here. The intelligence community has not concluded that. Obviously, there was an assessment that intelligence community made, and so I would have to refer you to ODNI on their assessment. But that particular piece about Russia, I know that they had not concluded that.
Right. And I know that the intelligence community has said that they still think it's not likely that a foreign power is responsible. How can the administration continue to believe that when you have so many credible U.S. officials who have experienced this saying otherwise?
So look, this is an intelligence community assessment. ODNI can speak specifically on how they got to that assessment, how they got to that conclusion, so I want to be super mindful. What I can speak to is what we have done since 2023, since the intelligence committee assessment, and we have taken this very seriously. The president takes U.S. personnel, making sure that they are protected is the most important. A couple of steps that we took, we prioritized investigations into the cause of AHIs and to examine reports thoroughly. Now, this is something that the president directed the departments in the federal government, obviously across the federal government, to do. Ensure that U.S. government personnel and their families who report AHIs receive the support and timely access to medical care that they need, and to take reports of AHIs seriously and threat to personnel with respect and compassion. So we have taken some actions that will that the president directed his agencies across the federal government. At any specifics to the intelligence assessment, I would have to refer you to ODNI.
Okay, so there you go. There's a lot of nothing. But they're certainly not confirming the idea that this is a Russian-directed energy weapon sort of event. So, if they're trying to get money for the war by saying this, this is certainly a backhanded way of doing that. So I don't know if that's what's really going on or not. Of course, again, that would be something that they would be capable of doing. But at this point, again, we just don't know. I'm not convinced that the people in positions of power know either. But we do know they've gotten people to study this phenomenon. Gary Nolan's involvement with UAP began after he was asked to use his blood analysis instrumentation to help with cases of pilots who were close to alleged UAPs and horrible brain damage. When asked if he could describe the more abnormal effects on the brains observed with MRIs, Nolan said, "If you've ever looked at an MRI of somebody with multiple sclerosis, there's something called white matter disease. It's scarring. It's a big white blob or multiple white blobs scattered throughout the MRI. It's essentially dead tissue where the immune system has attacked the brain. That's probably the closest thing that you could come to if you wanted to look at a snapshot from one of these individuals. You can pretty quickly see that there's something wrong. Approximately 100 patients, mostly defense or governmental personnel or people working in the aerospace industry, were analyzed," Nolan told Motherboard. Dr. Kit Green studied some of the people from what Nolan called a smorgasbord of patients. You have a smorgasbord of patients, some of whom had heard weird noises buzzing in their head, got sick, etc. A reasonable subset of them had claimed to have seen UAPs, and some claimed to be close to things that got them sick. And it goes on. I've talked about this before, and others have as well, about these, problems that these experiencers are encountering. Is this the Havana syndrome, or is this something completely different? Is the Havana syndrome caused by directed energy weapons? I don't think that we really know at this point. Could it be more UAP related? Again, I don't think we really know at this point, although it is clear that some victims, to use a word, I don't know what else to call them, of these contact experiences are having very similar effects. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I sure would appreciate your feedback because I don't know what's going on, but something is definitely going on, and I hope there are people actually working on it. It sounds like there are. But will we ever get to see the results of their research? That I don't know. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give me a big thumbs up. I sure would appreciate it. Smash the like button and the subscribe button and the bell to be notified of future videos. You don't want to miss a thing. Join me on social media. There's Facebook and Twitter links below. Love to see you guys there. If you wanted to support Cosmic Road in an even bigger way, consider grabbing a coffee mug or a t-shirt in the merch store below, or by becoming a channel member. Channel members are rock stars, and I really appreciate you guys' support. Thank you so much. Meanwhile, there are plenty of other videos on the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. This is Jack with Cosmic Road, signing out.